On a Sunday in March 2017, the Satchwell home in Youghal seemed ordinary from the outside. Inside, however, an eerie pattern of routine was already taking hold. Every night, Richard Satchwell filled Tina's bathtub, as he did every night, and sat beside her while she soaked, chatting quietly as steam curled around them. Tina, once a glamorous woman in her mid-40s, with a deep love of fashion, was devoted to her two tiny dogs, and Richard's telling, they were her children. He doted on her, applying baby oil to her skin, and even massaging her feet after her bath as one of their nightly rituals. She was petite, around 5'4", and elegant, and he took pride in providing for her every need. Yet beneath this veneer of domestic calm, subtle shadows gathered. Tina had not held a driving license and was reliant on Richard for transport. Her mobile phone and even their joint bank account were in his name by his own account. In the year before she vanished, things altered. Tina's phone would go missing, and he insisted that bills she once refused to put in her name were switched to his. In interviews, Richard would stoutly deny being controlling, but the facts spoke otherwise. He drove Tina everywhere and even paid for her phone service, justifying that she simply didn't want bills in her name as a result. Tina's world had quietly contracted. In their Youghal home, she became increasingly isolated, visiting friends less often and spending long afternoons alone in quiet corners. Despite these tensions, Richard portrayed himself as a loving husband who never said no to the woman he idolized. He recounted that if Tina returned, he would give her a bath and embrace her as if nothing was wrong at night. They would chat quietly, and often, after the chores were done, they would cuddle on the sofa with their dogs. Neighbors remember Tina as attentive to her appearance and kind, though by 2017, even she seemed subdued, sometimes tearful. Richard later told detectives that Tina had spent a lot of time crying in the months before she disappeared, convinced by a personal tragedy, the suicide of a close relative, that she wanted to leave it all behind in private. She had confided fears that she might have been abused as a child, and Richard believed she had seriously entertained leaving him for years. These were the unspoken undercurrents to the Satchwell routine. To the outside world, they were a normal couple. Tina, once bubbly and popular, now quiet and quieter still. Richard, steady and dutiful, meeting her every need. But to close friends and family, and to Tina's own gentle nature, something felt off. Perhaps it was the way Tina was no longer driving herself to Sunday car boot sales, instead always waiting for Richard to come home from work and take her. Perhaps it was the phone in his name, or the bank accounts she no longer controlled. Coercive control can creep in slowly. By paying all the bills, controlling the car keys, and positioning himself as Tina's sole protector and gatekeeper, Richard had erected an invisible cage. There were warning signs, but they remained mostly out of view in those early days. A minor argument here, a jealousy flicker there, all drowned out by routine. In the immediate aftermath of Tina's vanishing, the world around Youghal began to whisper. On Monday, March 20th, 2017, Richard told Gardaí that Tina had left home 4 days earlier, on that very Sunday, simply needing some time away to clear her head. He insisted it was nothing to worry about, citing a deterioration in their relationship and a history of Tina threatening to walk out whenever she felt upset. Richard even claimed, without concern, that Tina had taken 26,000 euros in cash from a box of savings he kept in the attic. To outsiders, his calm confidence fooled some. He appealed for help on national radio and television, making televised interviews to seek information about Tina's whereabouts. He described her as having a short fuse, prone to outbursts directed at Hemus if explaining why she might bolt, and he recounted that if she did return, he would simply put my arms around her. But authorities were uneasy. An initial Garda missing person inquiry unfolded over months. In June 2017, Gardaí obtained a search warrant for the Satchwell home, but found nothing noteworthy in what was only a surface search. It was treated as a run-of-the-mill missing person case. Coastlines canvassed, ports checked, forests searched. Meanwhile, neighbors recalled subtle signs they had not fully interpreted at the time. One knew Tina as a careful budgeter. Richard's story of her absconding with a chest of savings raised eyebrows. Even more puzzling was Richard's behavior at weekly Sunday markets. Tina and Richard regularly ran a car boot stall selling household goods, but after her disappearance, Richard appeared alone, offering a sob story. She has a serious respiratory infection and has gone to visit her sister in the UK, he told concerned sellers. Home, he quietly put Tina's favorite clothes and shoes for sale online, as if clearing space. In Ireland's villages, where everyone is connected, rumors began to swirl. Why had Richard left Tina's phone in the kitchen and her dog's home with only 2 packed suitcases when he claimed she'd run off with money? How did he manage to withdraw welfare at the old post office on the morning of March 20th, time-stamped on CCTV at 11:13 a.m.? When he had told Gardaí he was down in Dungarvan buying parrot food that day, and why was the chest freezer, which he continued to advertise for sale online even a week after his wife vanished, offered initially to Tina's own cousins? These inconsistencies gnawed at the investigators. Still, nothing was conclusive. For 2 years, Tina's case grew colder. Public sympathy for the loving husband, who claimed to have nothing to hide, remained mixed with suspicion that perhaps he was in pain or simply naive. Richard even arranged for enhanced cognitive interviews, a technique where he could speak at length about his version of events with the trained officer listening in these sessions. He painted Tina as volatile and himself as devoted. He said she had told him hundreds of times over 15 years that she would leave him, that she could be mean, and could hit you accusations that only deepened the mystery of their home life. To some onlookers, Tina's vanishing looked like another of her many threats to quit come to pass. To others, it appeared as a meticulously orchestrated cover story. By late 2023, after countless fruitless searches, Gardaí quietly shifted their outlook. A new murder investigation team was assembled, and Richard became a formal suspect. On October 10th, 2023, exactly 6.5 years after Tina walked out, detectives executed a highly invasive search of 3 Grattan Street with a multidisciplinary team, including forensic archaeologists and cadaver dogs. It was a far cry from the cursory June 2017 sweep. The operation was systematic and exhaustive. Walls were probed, concrete floorboards were peeled back, and every inch of the property was scanned. In court, the lead investigator would later describe how a Springer Spaniel named Fern, trained in cadaver scent detection, alerted on the concrete landing under the living room stairs the cadaver dog's cue turned out to be crucial. As officers began breaking through a section of walling under the stairs, they found Tina's skeletal remains in a shallow, 3-foot pit. She was wrapped tightly in black plastic sheeting and cemented into place, the heavy slabs sealing the clandestine grave. By then, Tina's body was so decomposed that forensic experts could only examine her bones, Dr. Margot Bolster later telling jurors that the remains were skeletal and that no cause of death could be determined. The find under the stairs sent shockwaves through the courtroom. It had taken years of dogged detective work, and yet the discovery came almost as an admission that Tina had never left Youghal alive. Evidence collected from the scene, traces of fresh soil under recently poured cement, Tina's dental records confirming identity, was damning. Gardaí also found traces of her DNA in the cabin of the chest freezer and on plastic rope in the shed, consistent with the story of a body being hidden and moved. These forensic clues gave the prosecution its foundation. Tina had been murdered and concealed in her own home. To be continued.
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for part 2.